Somewhere, lost in the clouded annals of history, lies a place that few have seen. A mysterious place called the Unknown, where long-forgotten stories are revealed to those who travel through the wood. Welcome to Project Geekology, episode 37, I believe. My name is Dakota, and I am joined as always with my co-host,
Anthony.
And today, we're going to be covering Over the Garden Wall, a Cartoon Network program that aired back in 2014 by creator Patrick McHale. It's 10 episodes, very short episodes. I think they're 10 to 11 minutes each. And in my opinion, it's one of the best shows that most people have never heard of. What are your thoughts, Anthony, since this is a new show for you?
Right, yeah, this is a show that kind of snuck by me because I hadn't heard about it before. And when you told me about it, I thought it was a new show. And then when I did a little bit of researching, I realized it came back in 2014 and that it's a mini series. So I was like, okay, it's definitely an interesting show. And I think that you have to give it a second watch, because that first watch, you really don't know what's going on. You're not understanding like what you're watching. It's an odd show. It's definitely creepy. It has its charm. It's oddly ominous and hopeful at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. All right, so we're going to get into more of the ominous quality, the hopeful quality, and the spooky quality and the funny quality, all that and more in just a moment. But Anthony, what have you been up to this past week?
What have I been up to?
Yes, that is my question to you. What have you been up to?
I don't know what I've been up to, but I just got one thing to say. I've got no sense at all.
No sense at all.
Well, I've been watching. I watched through Over the Garden Wall. I managed to watch it twice. So
nice. I mean, it's short enough. Yeah, it's short enough.
It's short enough
where that's like a possibility.
Right. It's tiny. I would say. It's 10 episodes, with each episode, like you said, ranging from 10 to 11 minutes. So, that's...
It's like the average...
Yeah,
it's the average length of a movie, basically.
So, yeah, I've been watching that. I've got my next convention set up for January. Can't wait.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going to be called... It's called Otaku Con. Otaku Fest. So... It's small.
So I'm guessing it's an anime convention.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure there's gonna be some other stuff there too. But yeah, anime.
I remember when anime festivals and Comic-Con festivals or comic book festivals were like separate things.
Yes,
and then they started doing them at the same time. Then I think New York Comic Con started doing this thing where it was like New York Comic Con, and then like on the bottom floor or the top floor, it was like I forget what anime festival it was, but it was like Anime Con or something like that, and that wasn't the name, but they started doing them together, and now it's just kind of melded into one idea. It's just pop culture from all over the world, and I think that's the cool thing about cons.
I actually think I remember that when I went to New York Comic Con with you back in 2018. I remember it was like NYCC Presents, and it was like anime something.
It might have been Anime Fest or something.
It was it was something along the lines, which unfortunately we actually didn't go see.
The problem is it's not really, and because I know this for a fact because I've been to New York Comic Con a number of times. It's not just one little area. It's more that it's like melded into Comic Con. Like they just spread it all around. It's still the Javits Center,
Yeah.
So it's a little confusing, and I feel like they should just call it Comic Con. And the anime fans should realize that there's a lot more than comic books at a comic convention.
Right. There's art. Where do they still put all the artists in the basement?
Yeah, they shove them down there. You don't want to look at them anymore.
Artist Alley's in the basement.
So Artist Alley, it's changed several times throughout the years. Before it was Artist Alley used to comprise a big part of the main show floor. like once you got past certain booths, it suddenly became artist booths for a long time. And that was probably up until like 2013, 2014, maybe a little earlier actually. And then they started shoving them downstairs into this little into the downstairs dungeon area, which was fine. It kind of worked for a little bit, and then they started doing expansion to the convention center in the Javits Center, and they started putting them, at least the past couple years that I remember, it was almost like a extension into a large tent or foyer room. And I think that was probably what it was in 2018, if I remember correctly. It was still like in the downstairs area. But now that it's complete, I haven't seen the Javits Center in a couple years, so I don't know what it's going to look like this year, but I will get back to you in a couple weeks' time because I plan on going to Comic-Con this year.
We didn't go in 2019, and then obviously not last year, so...
Yeah, last year was a bust for everyone. Yeah, so that's exciting that you're going to Otaku Fest. What else are you up to besides, this show and Otaku Fest?
Nothing big really. I don't have
anything anime related. Maybe like a Star Wars anime. I don't know.
Nah, that's not big enough. Star Wars Visions. That's baby anime. I'm just kidding.
It's actually amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I've started watching through Visions. I haven't completed it yet, because I'm also watching other anime too. So it's kind of like spreading it through. And Star Wars Visions, I know we'll have an episode for it specifically, but what it is it's a show of short stories within the Star Wars universe, and whether or not it's canon remains to be seen. Like I heard it's like in the in-between, but I'll leave that up to Dakota because he is the canon and timeline lord.
Yeah, so it is not canon. I think actually the creators of the show, or at least the people behind it, have stated that it's like definitively not canon, even though it's based heavily on the canon, obviously. I don't know how far you've got into the series, but the episodes are all based around like certain time periods and stuff, and they all kind of share the Jedi and Sith lore that we know and love. So it takes that and just injects Japanese culture into it, and I think that that's the ultimate goal of the thing, is to introduce people to anime, introduce new fans to these studios that have been making anime for years. Yeah, so there's a bunch of them that people will get involved with, hopefully, to check out some of their other shows and products that they've been working on over the years. And I really appreciate like what they have done with it, because each episode is stylistically awesome. I would watch a whole show based on each of those little one-shot stories, and I'm really pleased with it. Yeah,
so far it's pretty cool.
What is your favorite of the ones that you've seen so far?
The first one was really cool.
The Duel.
It was like really, it's crazy because it's like one of those like Japanese films that you've seen before, but it's Star Wars. A drifter or wanderer coming into town, and then there's these bandits that are taking over the town, taxing the town, and then there's the big bad, and then the wanderer ends up helping the town. That we've seen that story before, but it's really cool seeing it as a Star Wars anime.
Yeah, it's very clearly based on Akira Kurosawa's movies. The Seven Samurai, the Yojimbos, and stuff. And that is really cool because that's what the original Star Wars was partially based on. Like a lot of Lucas and Ralph McQuarrie's original concept for Star Wars was a bunch of things, but a big portion of like the Jedi stereotype and like mythology came from his love of Kurosawa's films and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a full circle thing where it's like Kurosawa makes these movies about samurais, and then George Lucas makes Jedi based on those very samurais, and then an anime studio makes a Akira Kurosawa-esque Star Wars story, and it's really cool. You know, it's I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man, that lightsaber that the Sith
Which one?
had.
The umbrella lightsaber?
Yeah.
That was kind of sick.
I was like, you could only see that in anime.
I know. It doesn't work in, like, you can't see that in a movie and think that that's, like, as cool as you can when you're watching it as an anime. You know?
Yeah. There's
a certain
things
stylisticness to it.
There's certain things that only anime can do, and that's why live action anything of anime doesn't usually pan out as the best. It's because you really can't do it.
There's a certain stylistic quality to anime that just works for the medium, and it's really hard to translate that in a live action, especially like a lower budget live action that you would get on like a TV show where they have to spread the wealth across the episodes and just try to make it look as real as possible, but you lose the stylistic quality of it usually.
Right, and you know, you and I had been talking. We definitely want to be able to cover more anime, and speaking of that, we're going to be covering Cowboy Bebop in the short future, the anime and the TV show. I don't know if you saw the intro that I sent you.
Yeah, I saw it. It was really cool. I guess Netflix made or recreated the opening
intro
to Cowboy Bebop, which is pretty cool. And it almost gave me Sin City vibes. I don't know if you remember that movie, Sin City, where it was very like comic accurate and just super stylistic. And that was actually one of them where I was just like, actually, this is very good, you know, in comparison to the comic book. So it might be something like that. And Anthony, you just mentioned like a future episode. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because last week we buckled down and decided what our next 15 shows are, including this one today, Over the Garden Wall. So in the current order that we have them, we're going to probably shift them around as we go about. But next week we have Revenge of the Sith, episode 3. Then we're discussing What If, season 1. Then, because Dune's coming out in a couple weeks, we're deciding to cover David Lynch's Dune. I think it came out in like 84 or 86. And we're going to see how that compares to Denis Villeneuve's Dune the next week. So we're going to be doing a 2-week Dune thing. Then we're going to go into the Chamber of Secrets. And then Eternals is coming out the next week. So we're going to cover that. And then we're going to do Cowboy Bebop, the anime. And then the Netflix Cowboy Bebop show. Then we're going to do an episode. We have a lot. We're well ahead of schedule this time. And it's actually pretty exciting. We have the first 4 episodes of the Wheel of Time, Season 1, dropping. And we'll cover those. Then we're going to do Into the Spider-Verse. Then we're going to cover the original Matrix. Then Spider-Man No Way Home is coming out that week. And then The Matrix Resurrections. And then we're going to cover season 1 of Hawkeye, or, you know, the entire show of Hawkeye. So we have a lot planned. That's 14 episodes down the line. If you want to see more of what we're planning in the future, please be sure to follow us at P Geekology on Twitter and Project Geekology on Instagram so that you can keep up to date with everything that we're working on. Because we have a lot planned for the show, and I think it's going to be a good time. And now that we actually have, like, a vision for where we're going, I think it'll be a lot more just tight, I guess, you know, on a weekly schedule and everything. And I'm looking forward to it.
Right. We've been talking about tightening up the bolts. It's been a little loosey goosey, and especially after our like bit of a break, you know, with me being sick and us just trying to find our stride again. I think that, you know, on the other side of this break that we're starting to tighten it up, not in a way that it feels like like it's a chore, but more so that we know what we want to cover and that we have something to look forward to, because we're not guessing what we want to cover, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm excited about the future of the podcast. You should be too. And I think a lot of it, and I'm looking forward to this as well, is going to like transcend into Geekritique content a little bit, in terms of I'm probably going to want to do shows or episodes on Geekritique that kind of go in line with what we're doing in the future of this show here, Project Ecology. So I'm just excited about the future of, creating content and stuff. And on top of that, I haven't mentioned this to you, Anthony, yet, but last week I got diagnosed with Lyme disease.
Wow.
And anaplasmosis. Yeah, so it was something I thought I had for a while. So I was like really out of it for the past couple months. I was feeling like foggy. My physical strength was just weak all the time. I was very fatigued after I came home from work and stuff. And I was just like, this feels weird. I gotta check it out. And turns out I have 2 tick-borne illnesses. Stupid ticks.
That's crazy. Did you ever like discover a tick on you at any point?
I did have a tick on me a couple weeks ago, but I think I had the sickness before that.
Before that, yeah.
Yeah. At least the anaplasmosis I probably had before that. Anyway, I'm on antibiotics. Should be cleared in a couple weeks.
That's good, man.
And I can already tell like my mental state is clearing up a little bit, just from the antibiotics just kicking in, and I've been in a good mood the past couple days because of it.
Yeah, I know. I did notice that you weren't really as energetic as you were before. So that's why, I didn't want to press recording too much, because I didn't know what was going on, and I was like, I don't want to burn you out.
And I did think it was burnout a little bit. I was worried it was burnout, because there was just some days where I was just like, I just don't want to do anything. But it wasn't. I don't think it was burnout, because I'm always excited about the next project that I'm doing, but for whatever reason I couldn't find the energy to do it. So it was something like that. So I'm on the mend. Don't feel bad for me. I'm actually very happy, and it's almost like I'm grateful that I know what the illness is, because now I can treat it. Man. I can treat it, and I caught it early enough where it's not going to have any lasting effects, hopefully. So here we go. That's pretty much what I've been doing too. I watched Star Wars Visions this past week.
Yeah, man, that's cool.
I really love Star Wars Visions. I actually watched through it twice. That's pretty much all I've done this week.
I know. Now on to more anime, Dakota.
Now, yes, Anthony's pushing me to watch more anime. What anime would you recommend I watch first, and then second?
Well, what's big right now is, there's My Hero, but I think you're reading the manga, right?
Yeah, I think I'm on volume 10 now, maybe 11, something like that.
And so I don't know, is that ahead of the show, or is that like? No,
it's probably end of season 2, early season 3, something like that.
Oh, okay. So My Hero, it's always a great show to watch. The Rising of the Shield Hero is another one that was like really, really big. Season 2 is coming out soon. Okay. I think Miguel and I were looking into that. And,
shout out to Miguel. Woo woo.
We're looking into that, and I think he said next month or something like that, maybe. So I'm pretty excited for that. I know that Demon Slayer is a big one too. Season 2 is about to drop.
So after we, finish off this year's podcast, because we have pretty much our entire lineup planned, maybe we should jump into some anime stuff next year.
Yeah, no, for sure.
That'd be dope.
Definitely.
So should we jump into our discussion of Over the Garden Wall finally, or do you have anything else to say?
No, I'm definitely ready to jump into Over the Watch.
Yeah, so Over the Garden Wall is a show about 2 lost kids in the woods. We don't know why they're lost until the very end of the show, but they're walking through the woods, and it actually starts with them just wandering, and Greg, the younger brother, is trying to pick a name for his frog that he just found. And Wirt, the older brother, realizes, oh wait, we're lost. Where are we going? We're just walking through the woods aimlessly. And then the entire show after that point is them going on random adventures with random characters and trying to get back to civilization. And it's just one of the... It's almost like Alice in Wonderland-esque, where they have fallen through a rabbit hole. Not necessarily a rabbit hole, but they've gone over the garden wall. And they are in a place called the Unknown. And the entire show, even like after the fact, it's still a mystery as to what the unknown is and so forth. And it's just such it's a bizarre story, but it's also, like you were saying, Anthony, it's hopeful, it's heartwarming. And, you know, because it's like a seasonal thing, because it's like kind of based around like the fall time, it's very spooky as well.
Right. Well, I mean, it is set during the fall, the Halloween season.
Yeah.
That I think that was a good non-spoiler take on it. And like if you really want to shorten it, it's two brothers trek through the unknown, and they're trying to find their way home. And they stumble across all these different characters. Very spooky scenarios. And before any of you Frozen 2 fans try to be like, oh, the unknown, they get that from Frozen 2. This show came out before that, okay? So,
yes,
and
it did.
you know, and there's a song in there called Into the Unknown.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
Actually, yeah, it's actually pretty good how that's exactly the same name as the Frozen 2 song.
Yeah, Disney. Trying to copy a song.
The original Frozen came out a year before this.
No, it did. But I'm talking about
Frozen 2. Yeah, Frozen 2.
The whole like notion of Into the Unknown and the unknown and all that. This show did it.
Right, but it's a different concept when it comes to Frozen 2.
Right,
it's a totally different unknown. But I think with Frozen 2, it's almost like a metaphorical unknown, because it's almost like they don't know themselves enough and where their stories are headed to devise what to do next. And that's why Into the Unknown is scary for them as characters in Frozen 2 versus a very literal unknown. Or at least we're meant to assume it's a literal unknown in Over the Garden Wall, you know?
Well, at least at the beginning. And then they try to make you seem, you know, we'll talk about the ending and our thoughts on that. But yeah, I mean, for those of you that like the spookiness of Courage the Cowardly Dog, I would give this a try. I mean, Courage probably was spooky every episode was spooky, and this is not so much the case for this show. But when this show does get spooky, it gets like really creepy.
It's true. Yeah, there's always like a creep factor like over the entire show, like a spooky factor. You know, layered with humor and layered with heart and layered with, you know, the overall drama that's going on. But then there are like certain parts of certain episodes that are just like, whoa, this went really dark. And you mentioned it early on when you were watching it for the first time, Anthony. You texted me and you said, I don't know who the target audience is. Is it kids? Is it adults? Is it somewhere in between? And I can't answer that for you because, you know, characters like Greg, you can appreciate as an adult because it's ridiculous, this stupid stuff he says. But it's also funny enough for children to just be like, you know, like repeat random phrases like "that frog's giving me the runaround" or something like that. It's just funny, you know. And it's well written, and I like the fact that it's actually acted by a kid. You know, Greg is actually a kid.
Yeah, it is
saying
a kid.
those lines. So I think that adds a little bit of I don't know, magic to the recording.
Right.
It feels
it's a lot more authentic,
genuine,
than
almost,
having an adult voice act a child voice. You know.
Yeah, I'm sure Tara Strong would do a great Greg, but I'm happy that they chose a relative unknown actor.
Hey, he did really good.
Actor. He did a fantastic job. I think he's my favorite character, honestly. So, what about you? Where do you stand on like favorite characters?
You know,
I guess we should talk a little bit about the characters,
right?
Because we're still in like a very non-spoiler section of this review. So Greg is the young kid who is oblivious, aloof, 100% off base, and messing things up the entire show, but in the most hilarious way possible. Like, he's the goofy cartoon character that you need for a show like this to have, I guess, the laugh out loud moments that it sometimes does. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have his older brother, Wirt, who is just like, you could tell he's like a maybe early high school kid, maybe freshman or sophomore year.
I can see that. I can see that, especially when you get to the penultimate episode.
Right, and he has certain things that he's dealing with in reality that he's bringing with him mentally through the unknown, and or physically. I mean, jury's still out on that one, but he is a character who is very just, you know, he has pent up teen angst, and he's not confident in himself, and confidence is something that he's clearly lacking throughout the show, and something that he needs to gain, as well as a dismissal of the stupidity of his younger brother, which is a very common thing for older brothers to, you know, like, come on, I don't want to play this game anymore. It's kind of stuff.
Right, and you know, when you chalk up this show is a really good show of like brotherhood. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a great story about, you know, two brothers who couldn't be on opposite ends of who couldn't be more opposite, like spectrum wise.
Right.
And they need to find each other to get through the woods, basically.
And then, you know, we didn't mention that Greg is he's a teapot elephant, and Wirt is a World War II garden gnome. No, Civil War garden gnome.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing, but they're wearing a costume throughout the entire show for whatever reason. You don't know at the offset of it.
Well, they kind of throw you in. Like, they throw you into the show with these two kids that are lost, and you're like, how'd they get lost?
And why are they wearing such stupid outfits? Yeah, they never tell you until the very end, which I appreciate. I love the way that the show unfolds itself a little bit. So we also have characters like Beatrice. She's a mainstay throughout the show. She's a bluebird who can talk, and she is, quote unquote, trying to help the two kids get through the woods. We don't really know her ultimate motives until later on in the show, but she does become a close friend to Greg and Wirt. I think that's safe to say.
Right.
And then what is your go-to name for the frog? Because Greg renames him in every episode, but like, what is your favorite of the names that he came up with?
He called him George Washington.
That is the best. And then, like, in the next episode, he calls him Benjamin Franklin. But yeah, no, George Washington. That scene is probably my favorite in the entire show. There's a scene on a steamboat that's like powered by frogs, and you know, all the frogs are in like uniform, and it's like a very like civil frog society. And then the frog that Wirt and Greg bring along throughout the entire show, who they rename, or Greg renames in pretty much every episode.
Right. I really do like the frog. The frog it's a it's a non-speaking character except for like 2 instances where it's singing.
And everyone's like surprised that the frog can sing.
Even like the frogs that on that boat were like, huh?
Yeah. and in that episode, his name is George Washington, and you know, when Greg points out that the president is naked. I love that stuff.
The intro song that the frog sings is really interesting because there's a lot of scenes that set you up for the rest of the show.
And it's interesting, yeah. On a second watch, you catch it, but in the first watch, you're just like, this is random nonsense. You know, you can't grasp anything, and it's kind of cool because it's clearly a show that's meant to be rewatched. And
yeah, it really
replayed.
is. I'm like, because in that first watch, like, I'm not gonna lie, like at first, like when I'm watching, I'm like, I don't know what to think about this show.
Right, and I was so curious about like your first thoughts, and I had to like pry it out of you, like, hey, have you started watching? And you're like, yeah, I'm like halfway through, and I was just like, I wonder if he likes it. Maybe he hates it. I don't know. But I'm happy that you have gone through it, and not only that, but watched a second time. I think both of us rewatched it right before doing this podcast. But I think now is a good time to break off of spoilers per se, so we can get more into the nitty gritty of the individual episodes and like what we liked about the story, maybe what we didn't like. But I highly recommend Over the Garden Wall. It's, like we said, 10 episodes. Each episode is about 10 minutes in length. You can find all of them on HBO Max if you have a subscription there, or I'm sure you can find them online somewhere. But I highly recommend the show if you are interested in both a good animation, at least fun animation, clever animation, and also just a whirlwind of a story and emotions, because you get a lot of that throughout the show. So I recommend you checking out the show before you continue this podcast if you haven't already. But for the rest of you, the rest of us, stick with us. We're going to talk more in depth about what we liked and didn't.
Yeah, if you don't watch the show, then they're going to burgle your turts.
And you're not going to understand that reference unless you watch it. We're here to burgle your turts.
Oh my gosh. Alrighty.
I wonder if we should we discuss it episode by episode? Should we discuss the overall themes? I don't even know where to start with this show. But I guess we'll start at the start. You know, the intro has the president, or George Washington, or whatever we're going to call the frog for the remainder of the podcast, on the piano singing the introduction of the show. And it's like it's a slow melody. It's almost like crooning a little bit, and you know, the frog has a very deep voice, and it sets the tone for the adventure that awaits almost.
Right. And you know, the thing that's crazy is that that song that we get in the beginning is the first half of the song, and you only get that first half. And so that first half kind of sets that ominous tone to it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the music in the show, not only the music in the introduction of this first episode, is very important to almost like the spirit of the show, you know, in terms of like how it works, how it's how we consume it and understand it. It's a very musical show. And it's not a musical, for sure. It's not a musical, but there is a heavy influence of music in it, and there are scenes where characters do sing, and it just adds a certain flavor to it.
Right. I wouldn't say it's a musical in the traditional sense. I would say that it's more of it's a narrative story that has musical elements to it. And I will say that, like, I mean, some of the songs are like they're catchy.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking of
remember that when they go
the
to
potato
that
and molasses song.
When they go to the end.
The end. The end is so good. I'm the highwayman.
Okay.
And
like, it was and that song is like pretty dark, and so is like that dance that he does.
Yeah. So it's interesting because the show bounces from mood to mood, and it can get really dark really quick. You know, sometimes you think that the characters have saved the day, and then you realize they've made it so much worse. So there's a lot of that in Over the Garden Wall that really just works. And because they're bite-sized episodes, you can watch any of these episodes and in mostly any order almost, because even though there is an overarching narrative throughout the show about, like, you know, trying to trust certain people and knowing who to trust and so on and so forth, the individual episodes work on their own.
Right. So would you say, well, maybe not like the 9th episode is like its own thing too, but I would say that there were like a couple episodes when you get towards the end where they're connected, and you would have to watch them together to understand it.
I would say, yeah, maybe like episodes 8 through 10, you kind of have to sit or watch on a single sitting. If you're gonna, like, if you haven't watched the show in a while or whatever, and you're just trying to, you know, just capture like the ending of the series and understand what's happening, you'd have to watch 8 through 10, because it kind of goes into, although episode 8 is probably my least favorite, because it's kind of like that episode where Greg goes into Cloud City. And it's almost like an old Disney short, like the you remember, you know, the old,
kind of, it
shorts.
It did kind of make me think of like an old timey cartoon. I would say that I wasn't a big fan until like maybe like the North Wind came in, and then you started seeing how it was affecting the real world,
or the unknown, at least. So
the unknown.
And we keep saying this because even at the end of the show, it's unclear whether the unknown is a real place. But there are clearly events that happen after the show is over, seemingly, that show that the events in the unknown were true events, you know? So it's hard to say, because I think the show is meant to be interpreted differently by different people. I've seen like some crazy theories about like what the show actually means or whatever, what the final song is, because the final song goes into the, like, these are the loveliest lies of all. Like, what does that mean? What is a lovely lie? And I think we'll talk about that a little bit, or we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So in the first episode, we meet the woodsman character. And we're not really sure what his deal is, because he's mysterious in a sense that, like, he's hiding something from our main characters, or he's not telling them enough about his business or what he does for a living or whatever, that they are suspicious of him and want to either attack him or leave his settlement.
Right.
For whatever purpose. But we do know that he shows up several times throughout the show, and for the most part he is a benevolent figure. He's trying to help the kids, even though he's a grumpy old man.
Right. And he is the one that tells us of the villain of the story, which is the Beast. Right,
which is such a good villain for this show. But we'll talk more about the Beast in a little bit. We do get some, I guess, hints at what the Beast could be early on. I love the scene where Word is outside and he's following the frog into a barrel.
No, Greg.
I'm sorry, Greg. Yeah, I get the two mixed up. Greg is following the frog into a barrel, and suddenly this beastly thing pops up with eyes that are eerily similar to those of the actual Beast later on in the show. Like, I don't know if you caught that, but like, Greg actually makes a point to mention, "You have beautiful eyes," as he's like cowering in fear. It's actually a funny line.
Oh yeah,
it's super creepy.
Yeah, when he's in the barrel. But yeah, like when that creature pokes his head into the barrel, I was like, yeah, okay, this show is creepy. That was
Yeah,
like the first instance where I was like, okay, this show is going to be creepy.
Yes. I warned you about that. I warned you it was going to be creepy. It ended up turning out to be like, after they destroy this poor huntsman or the woodsman's house and everything.
Yeah,
it turns
mill.
out that it was just, his mill. They end up finding out that this quote unquote beast that they're running away from is no more than just a dog.
That swallowed the turtle that Greg put candy on in the beginning episode.
You caught it, didn't you? Yeah. So there's something about the turtles in this world that is a mystery, and I haven't really thought too much about it. I know Jen is really trying to piece together what the turtles represent. Do they represent death? Do they represent corruption? I have no idea what the turtles mean, or if they mean anything besides they're literal. They're creepy too, because they're almost like licorice turtles.
They're just straight up black.
They're black turtles.
Dark, yeah. And that same dog was the same dog from the intro song.
Right, and a lot of the if you go back and rewatch the show, you'll notice that a lot of the intro characters, or the characters in the intro song, are the same individuals or same creatures or whatever that they interact with throughout the show. And one thing that's really interesting is watching the intro scene of all these characters and then the outro scene at the end of the show.
Yeah.
In the 10th episode. And it's almost as if through their adventures, Greg and Wirt have helped these individuals complete or fix something in their lives, and they're now able to move on with them. I guess it's an interesting. It's almost like a purgatory sort of thing.
That's a theory. That's a theory.
It feels like it's.
That's a theory because they're saying. I think that one of the original names for the unknown was the in-between.
That's interesting. That's really cool. So that could be the case where the unknown is actually like a purgatory for characters who are stuck in their own beautiful lies, or the lovely lies that they're stuck in. And I'm calling it lovely lies because that's what the frog sings at the end of the show. These are the loveliest lies of all. And I have a feeling the loveliest lies. There's a lot of theories about it, but I have a feeling it's mostly about the lies that these people tell themselves to get them through the unknown or whatever.
Yeah, like the woodsman and his daughter and.
Right. Because the show revolves around lies. Beatrice lied to Greg and Wirt as to the nature of Adelaide and why she's a bluebird and stuff. You said the huntsman. The beast lies to the huntsman about why he needs to keep the lantern burning, and
right.
There's the whole show is actually just a bunch of lies in terms of what's actually happening and stuff. So it's surprisingly deep. The more you think about it and the more you go into each episode looking for clues, the more you'll find. And I love stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it really is an interesting show because I don't think I've ever I've seen shows Adventure Time and the regular show, and they're different from other shows, but there's something extremely different about this show. I've never seen a cartoon like this because, like I said, it's so confusing to the target demographic, and it's not like the show is confused about what it wants to be. It's more like I'm confused of what it's supposed to be. Who's it supposed to be for?
Yeah, and I actually do. I appreciate that it's so ambiguous in terms of what it means. What is the ultimate meaning of the show besides brotherly love? I'm happy that the show has a clear closed ending. It's 10 episodes that clearly tell a closed story. from like there's a clear arc of, you know, Greg and Wirt doesn't get along with Greg, and Wirt blames all his problems on Greg, to the end of the show when Wirt accepts Greg as a brother and clearly loves his brother and wants to help his brother. And there's a clear arc there, you know, and it's fascinating, the journey that we're sent on to get to that point.
What about that second episode? That second episode was creepy too, but not creepy in the sense of that dog in the first one was, but creepy in the sense of like when you realize the nature of the town.
Yeah, I forget the name of the town. Do you remember what it was?
Was it like Hopsfield or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Like Pepper Free. I don't know. It was something very, you know, just homely and like Middle America-y, and it was a town where it was seemingly a ghost town at first that they entered, and you know, they're followed by Beatrice, who is trying to lead them to Adelaide of the Forest, and she has her own agenda in mind. She clearly just wants to save herself and her family by bringing these two to Adelaide, but they're kind of just following their own intuition at that point because they're so freshly lost in the woods, and they find this town they're trying to call home or whatever.
When Wirt goes into that house and he sees the turkeys.
It's just a single turkey that's just like,
oh yeah, the turkey, yeah, it's just like laying on the table.
And there's so much that like the characters of Greg and Wirt just dismissing, you know, like this is a weird thing that, you know, that's just as weird as everything else that we've experienced in the unknown, and they just move past it, you know. They don't just like they don't second guess any of the weird stuff that's happening in this town or this world basically. And anyway, they find their way to this party, and it's almost like a cult gathering.
100%
of these people dancing around a giant stalk thing with a big pumpkin on the top, and everyone's wearing pumpkin outfits, and it's like just bizarre.
Right, and it was Beatrice and Wirt are kind of the same, but yeah, Beatrice is like, is this as weird as I think, you know, like isn't this like weird?
yeah,
and it's like kind of weird because they're thinking like, oh it's a costume, right? Oh yeah, when they walk into that town, when they first walk into the town, they step on those pumpkins by accident.
Yes, and for the entire episode, Greg is wearing a pumpkin on his foot.
Yeah, and then like the leader of this like weird pumpkin town, because like I don't know, these like people are like pumpkin people. They sentence. They're like, all right, we sentence you, and they're thinking that like they're gonna execute them or something, you know. But they're like, all right, to 3 hours of manual labor or something like that. And so like they're like they're in this field that they, you know, picking this stuff that kind of looks like corn and digging holes and stuff. And then Beatrice is like, you guys are digging your graves.
And you could it actually looks like they are digging their own graves.
I know. And then you see like the townspeople like coming up, and yeah, like it just seemed like, yeah, like okay, and like you're thinking, oh my god, they're gonna try to like kill him or something.
Yeah.
But then really what they were digging holes were down to these like skeletons, and it
that
like
became alive basically,
and it's put on
came to life.
And then put on these pumpkins and clothing, and you're like, oh okay, so this town is filled with skeleton people.
And there's actually like hints about that earlier in the show, because when Wirt is like in the party, he talks to someone like a female one of these pumpkin people, and she's just like, aren't you a little early? And we don't understand what that means until you realize he's still living and they're not.
And it's funny because like they're like all running away, and the townspeople don't really care. They're like, okay, we got our people, that's it. They're like, oh, are we being chased? No. And then the third one, I think, is your favorite one.
Which one?
Is when they go to school.
Oh, I do like the third one. I don't think it's my favorite, but I do.
Because of the
I
song.
love the teacher. I love the teacher. First of all.
Oh my gosh, I love it when she starts singing, and Beatrice
about,
is like, ooh.
about Jimmy Brown,
right? And then Beatrice is like, "Ooh, this lady has baggage."
Because she's a school teacher, she's supposed to be teaching these kids, so she starts singing a song about the ABCs, but all the ABCs have to do with how this guy Jimmy Brown left her, and it's such a it's like a sad old timey song, but it's also hilarious.
Yeah, everything about that show is
teacher.
old timey.
Yes, and I think it's kind of set in like the 80s, maybe. Once you realize like what the modern day setting is.
Oh, outside of the unknown. The unknown.
Yeah.
The unknown is kind of timeless because some of it looks like it takes place in like the 1800s. Some of it looks like it could take place in like the 1600s. It's really like odd.
For sure, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's funny when they go and they go and eat lunch. And the teacher's like playing this like sad song, and they're eating just like bland potatoes, mashed potatoes,
and all the animals look sad, and you actually kind of feel bad for them the way that they animate the animals. They look truly depressed with their lives.
What about when Greg walks up to the piano? He's like, "Hey, can you play something like this?" Bum, 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 bum. Like just like it just like starts mashing on the piano, like just like nothing. And
the teacher's like this, and it's like a slightly more jolly song,
right? And then Greg's like kind of not happy about it, but he's like, I guess that works.
He's like, good enough.
Then he gets like this molasses that happens to be sitting on top of that piano too.
Yeah, and the genius of this episode is the song "Potatoes and Molasses," because the idea of eating potatoes and molasses is just disgusting, but it would spice up their meal. But
I know, mashed potatoes and molasses.
It sounds disgusting, but one thing that I love, and I didn't realize it until like I had listened to the album like outside of the show, is that they had recorded a version of Potatoes and Molasses in Latin, and they play it at the end of the show. It's called Potatus et Molassus, and it's just the Potatoes and Molasses song, but translated into Latin. And the actor for Greg actually goes and sings the entire thing in Latin, and it's really fun. I think it's really funny.
And then so you end up finding like her father, the teacher's father, is the one that funds this school, and it's a school for animals. Like humanoid animals that are like that. They're being taught like human children. So yeah, he kind of busts in. He takes the instruments that are being played during that song, and you go and realize that he really took the instruments so he could sell them to make more money for the school, because he it's for his daughter. He wants to do what he can for his daughter, because her man left her. And this whole time there's like this random gorilla that's running around in the forest.
Yes, and I love that line. I love that line where the teacher's just like, and that wild gorilla that's running around, and you're just like, wait, what? In the woods? You're just like,
no, it's funny because like and this is like one of the nice moments where they kind of like fix things because Greg and Wirt they find out the father talking to himself that they need money for the school, and so they take the instruments and set up this like little benefit concert to raise money for the school. And then this like gorilla just pops up out of nowhere, and Wirt, I think he like trips, right? And then like
he
knocks over the gorilla, and the head comes off, and it's the teacher. What was his name? Jimmy Brown. Yeah, and it ends up being this lady's boyfriend or fiance the whole time. He just couldn't take off the head,
which is so stupid. But
he joined the circus to make money for a ring.
Yeah. Oh man, the show's so dumb, but it's another one of those lies, that like the show kind of fixes or like mends. The lie that the gorilla is terrorizing the town.
And he's just like running around trying to get help with the head.
Yeah, but he is like hiding behind things. Like he was hiding in like the bushes earlier in the episode.
He's like really acting menacing.
Yeah. So the next episode is them going into this inn in the middle of nowhere, and they're trying to find directions to get out of the pasture. Or no, they're trying to find directions to go to Adelaide.
Right.
And because Beatrice isn't allowed in the inn, she can't ask for directions. And there's a funny scene where like the they're like, bluebirds are bad luck, and it's just like, where did that rule come from? And
maybe in the unknown.
Well, yeah, and then Beatrice is like, no, bluebirds are good luck, and they're like, well, either way, I don't want it, and they kick Beatrice out, and she spends her night with Fred the horse.
Yeah, Fred the horse, who is, and we didn't even speak about that woodsman that we meet is voiced by Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, let's go through the cast list while we're at it, because there's so much incredible cast.
While we're on this episode, because Fred the horse is also voiced by a familiar person that we've heard before.
Fred Stoller.
Yeah, he is that very he always plays those like really depressed characters.
Yeah. Wirt, one of our main characters, is played by Elijah Wood, and I told Anthony that like once you realize who it is, you're gonna have a hard time like being able to like unhear it, like all you'll see is Elijah Wood as this character now, which isn't a bad thing. There's Colin Dean, who plays Greg, and the picture shows him currently, as of right now, he is 16 years old. So back in 2014, he was a 9-year-old boy.
Right,
so
and I think that was a good character. That was a good person to cast for a young character, because I'm pretty sure that Greg seemed like a kid anywhere from maybe 7 to 9.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he was short, but I know he was older. He wasn't like a 5 or 6 year old. He was an older kid.
Yeah, he was clearly like maybe like early middle school, late elementary school, something like that.
Yeah.
We have Melanie Linsky as Beatrice. Like you said, the woodsman was played by Christopher Lloyd, and it's a very like
it's him.
You hear it immediately.
You hear it immediately. It's him.
And it works so well with that character, the grumpy old man character.
Yeah.
The Beast is played by Samuel Ramey. What else is Samuel Ramey in? I'm gonna look that up really quick.
Yeah,
he was in Amadeus. He's in a bunch of stuff, but he has such a great voice for it.
Right.
Then they have Quincy Endicott, who's played by John Cleese, one of the Monty Python dudes. Oh, Tim Curry plays Auntie Whispers, which is like the scariest character ever.
Definitely a really weird character, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of that hunchback character from Courage the Cowardly Dog. Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Who also had the bells?
Wait, what?
The hunchback from Courage the Cowardly Dog. He had this thing for bells, and Auntie Whispers had a bell.
That's super creepy. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I don't know who the rest of the cast list is, but I recognize the character who played Jimmy Brown. I don't know if you ever watched Reno 911, but he's like the sheriff of Reno 911, Thomas Lennon. So it's a stacked cast. So it's a fantastic show in that respect too. Like the fact that they were able to get such huge names for those roles, because what's interesting is a lot of those are actual actors. They're not voice actors.
Right.
But they were able to get such a stacked cast somehow. I don't know if, I don't know the strings that need to be pulled, but, the fact that Elijah Wood is playing the main character, you have actors like Tim Curry and...
Right. And it's seemingly for a show that
Lloyd.
Nobody really knows about, but it's rated really well.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. I love all that kind of stuff. So I actually really like the episode where they're in the inn, because it's such a bizarre... Everything in the show is bizarre. Like, nothing goes according to plan. Nothing is what it seems. But
I'm the
there's just
highway
a bunch...
man.
Okay.
And he does it right when somebody's talking, too.
Yes. I would say this is probably one of the more musical episodes, in the sense that several songs are played.
Right.
But they end up thinking, like, all the people in this inn end up thinking that Wirt is trying to find the person that he loves, which is Adelaide. And, the people are like, oh, so it's a woman that you're after. And then they start planning his marriage, and we have the tailor here. He'll make you a suit, and we have this person and that person, and it's just such a fun, quirky thing until the highwayman shows up.
Yeah, then he starts singing this like creepy song.
I'm the highwayman. I make ends meet. Take your shoes right off your feet. It's so stupid.
And he starts dancing, and it's like really creepy.
Yeah, because it's almost like he stops like obeying the laws of gravity, the way that he's like leaning over, and like it's just super in your face kind of stuff. It's really cool though.
Yeah, it's really trippy. But yeah, that episode is where they get and then Beatrice leaves. She flies away because she hears it's the bee singing,
right?
And so Greg and Greg and Wart go to find her, and they end up and they hop on the horse, Fred the horse, and they find her, and they find the woodsman kind of over her with this lamp and an axe. And really, you go and find out that he didn't do anything. It was her that flew into a tree, and she like got knocked out.
Yeah. So while he's in the inn, a lot of them are talking about how the one with the dark lantern is the beast, or the beast is always near the dark lantern, and it's true. So we don't realize it until like I think it's this episode when the beast first shows up. But he is always trying to get the woodsman to keep the lantern burning. And
right. And they make the woods are like really, really dark. I mean, like they made a good they did a good job at making the woods like very ominous and just like super dark.
It reminds me of Snow White, the first Disney movie, where the scene where she's going through the woods and she runs into it, and it's like those trees that are like have like really gnarly branches, and it almost looks like the trees have faces, and it's a very dark and scary scene, and she falls to the ground in that moment. It's almost like they took that idea and made it the setting of this show. You're in these woods now.
Yeah.
And that's where this resides. So while they're on Fred the horse, they go to this giant mansion. They need passage on this ferry, so they're trying to steal something from someone who is very wealthy. So they find a giant mansion, and the episode actually starts with them having dinner with this guy who they have conned into believing that they are his nephews. And he's just this really aloof, wealthy guy who's just like, the more money I get, the bigger my house gets, and the more lost I get. And he's just so...
He's like, I don't even know who I am.
Yeah, it's such a bizarre character, but I love it.
And I love Beatrice. It was like she was the one that kind of set it up. She set up the con. Where is kind of like, we're gonna rob this guy. Oh, kind of like this isn't right. And then he was like kind of like, oh, what does the horse want? He's like, I want to steal.
Yeah, it's so funny. There's little things like that where it's just like one-liner conversation sort of things that just end in a joke that you gotta love. It's just good writing.
Oh, and We forgot about the Adelaide song that they sang.
Adelaide, Adelaide, we're going to the Adelaide parade or something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, that mansion episode was pretty funny when you because he kind of freaking out because he says that he keeps on seeing the ghost of a woman.
Yeah.
And like, so it's kind of setting up the episode to seem like it's like creepy. I'm like, oh man, there's gonna be a ghost in this one. That's probably gonna be super creepy.
And it turns out to be just this guy's mansion is so big that he has somehow built his mansion into the mansion next door of his competitor, and together they share a super mansion, and they don't realize that each other live in the same place, and basically they occasionally catch glimpses of each other and think that each other are specters or ghosts or whatever.
Yeah, they're like, no, this is my house. No, this is my house. And then there's like a sign that they're like, no, this is my tea garden.
Yeah. So now I guess they have the monopoly on tea in the unknown, or however they sell their tea. I have no idea what to make of that episode. I think that might be one of the weaker episodes for me in terms of like the overall arc, because it does take you out of the woods for the episode, you know?
Right. And like the whole reason why they're there though is like they need money to go onto the ferry.
They need 2 pennies.
2 pennies.
Which is such a funny small amount. And
yeah.
I love the fact that they find this person with so much wealth and all they need is 2 pennies. And, you know, instead of just asking the guy for 2 pennies, they go through this crazy, like, ghost hunt almost.
Yeah, try to find money. Until,
of course, Greg, at the end of the episode, throws a cents into the well and goes, "I got no sense at all."
So which episode? What? I don't know if we're misplacing episodes. Which episode is the one? Is it after the ferry or before the ferry with the Auntie Whispers one?
I think it's after the ferry. I'm looking it up now. Hold on.
Because that one was by far the creepiest one out of them all. That was the creepiest episode.
Yeah, so episode 6 is Lullaby in Frogland, and then the next episode is The Ringing of the Bell.
Oh, okay.
Ringing of the Bell is by far the creepiest, yeah. So let's talk about Lullaby in Frogland, because I think that's my favorite of all the episodes, because it's so bizarre, but it has its own mood thing going on. You know?
Yeah, I did like that episode too. Yeah, especially with George Washington singing. And you realize that boat that they're on is that wind-up boat from the beginning?
Oh, yes. So, if you don't remember...
sense. It's so much sense.
If you don't remember, like in the beginning of the show, there's just a bunch of random either individuals or creatures or things that like are featured throughout the unknown, you know, in these individual episode sort of things. And the boat is... Yeah, it's the toy boat that they show in the beginning of the show, and now they're using that as a ferry down the river.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that it's run by frogs. All the frogs are wearing gentlemanly attire. They're taking pictures of like their newborn tadpoles, and it's just some random nonsense and frog stuff. And like the hors d'oeuvres that they're passing around are just flies and stuff. So when people knock over the hors d'oeuvres tray, there's like the frogs like grab the flies out of the air. It's just quirky,
I know,
frog nonsense.
And it's funny that like the frogs really aren't paying any attention to the fact that there's a couple of humans on board, you know, with the bird.
Yes. Yeah, and we're not really sure if the frogs are mad about the fact that they didn't pay the 2 pennies to get aboard, or if George Washington is naked. Yeah, so because there was the scene after the fact when, you know, they get onto the stage and they're wearing this disguise where George Washington is at the top and Word is like holding him up, and then the cloak comes off him and it's just like a naked frog on top of Word's head, and everyone seems to be like in shock at the fact that he's naked. So it might have been that George Washington was naked, and that's why.
Yeah, they were in shock, but they didn't really care because they liked the music.
Yes, and that was actually I love that song. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but
I did too. But the song, both of the songs that the frog sings are really good.
Yeah, the voice is just
the voice
it's
actor
nice.
that sings for the frog has like a really nice like deep voice.
Yeah,
and it goes well for
just
that type of music that he's singing. You know, it's like it goes well with that like setting that the unknown is set in, like kind of old timey. You know.
So what they did was it was a singer, or the frog is voiced by Jack Jones, who's an American singer. He's 83 years old now, so he was probably late 70s when the show came out.
Yeah, he sounded it sounds like an older person.
Yeah, but the timbre was super deep, but you could tell it was a very well trained voice, and I appreciate like that they decided to go that route, because again, it kept the old timey feel.
It really did. It really did. Yeah, that episode was interesting, and then it's funny where the fairy was taking them
To the mud.
to the mud,
so that they can hibernate or whatever.
Yeah, because it's getting towards winter.
Yeah, and very very soon in the show, like, it starts snowing and stuff. So that's a good point. And one of my favorite lines in that episode is when they present the other frogs present George Washington with a record deal, and Greg looks at him and he goes, "Well done, Mr. President. Well done," or something like that. So good.
Yeah, I know, and he was mature enough to be like, I've got to let him go.
Yeah, that was an interesting moment, because none of the other characters seemed to care. The other characters had walked off, but like Greg realized it was almost like
it was a mature moment for Greg.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time like putting words to it, because it was a wordless scene, but it was almost like, Greg saw that George Washington, the frog, was doing well for himself, and he didn't want to take away from his moment, and he just like nodded and like walked away. It was really good.
Yeah, no, it was, nothing was really being said, but you understood what was going on.
So Greg and Wirt find this seemingly abandoned house, and
to burgle some turds.
It's really weird. They end up finding a whole barrel full of turtles, and we know that turtles aren't a good sign for the show. We learned that in the past, but for whatever reason, there's turtles in this house, so it's a bad sign. So the girl that comes to the door, who I guess lives there, I forget her name. Do you remember? Yeah, so this girl that lives in this house is clearly sick. She's coughing, she's pale, and you're not really sure like what her deal is, but she wants to hide them from her auntie.
Right. And once you see the auntie, who happens to be named Auntie Whispers, voiced by Tim Curry, very creepy character. Very, very creepy character.
I don't know how they could have possibly made that character even creepier than it is, but yeah, it's
Lorna.
Like, her teeth are Lorna,
Loma.
yes.
No, Loma or Lorma, is it?
No, it is Lorna. It's Lorna. Yeah, you're right.
Lorna.
And the fact that like Auntie Whispers is, you can't even see her feet. Like, it's just she's like, how do I describe her? It's almost like they watched Spirited Away and got the idea from Yubaba, the witch, because that's kind of the shape that she is.
And you see, and this is why this episode is one of the reasons why I'm like, okay, the show kind of spans over, or the unknown spans over different times, because the way that they're dressed is like old school Massachusetts from like the Crucible or something.
Yeah, and it's almost like they picked and choose random stuff from all over, like different ages and stuff. And even in the like 2 episodes prior, when they're in the Endicott Mansion. Wirt makes the like seemingly out of character description that like half the mansion is French Rococo and the other one is more Georgian style, and it's almost like there's different styles of places and cultures that are just mismatched in this reality.
Yeah.
But anyway, Auntie Whispers comes. They're hiding in a barrel full of turtles, and Auntie Whispers is creepy, dude. Like, just the way that they animated her, everything, like the fact that, you know, she's talking about like you don't want to get eaten or something like that.
Greg is just like completely ridiculous in this episode. When they first meet Lorna,
yes,
she's like, "Oh, who are you?" And then Greg is like, "We're burglars. We're here to burgle your turds." And then Wirt's like, no, stop, shut up. We're not burglars.
This show is so well written, and the fact, I keep coming back to this, the fact that it's a kid playing Greg is so genuine sounding, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you can believe a kid would be this dumb, or this stupid, or this aloof to the danger that they're in. And anyway, so they, for whatever reason, Auntie Whispers has a little bell that glows when, and you know, the light of the bell compels you to like listen to me, basically.
Right, and Lorna, like her eyes kind of like light up too.
Yeah, it's, the whole thing is super weird and creepy, but they end up stealing the bell, or at least Greg steals the bell.
Greg goes upstairs.
Oh no, it was George Washington ate the bell or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Anyway, they free this person, Lorna, who they assume is being kept against her will. It actually seems like she is being kept against her will. Because,
right,
you know,
right.
It's Auntie Whispers isn't her real family, and all this. So
right,
Greg's like, no, we gotta get you out of here.
Chores and stuff.
Yeah,
and
Wirt's saying that we got to get you out of here.
Right. And then, you know, Auntie Whispers like chases down Greg, and I think his name is Benjamin Franklin in this episode, the frog. And they run in the room that Lorna usually stays in, and Auntie Whispers is like, look, I tried to warn you. Now she's going to eat you. And you're like, oh, crap. And you turn around, and Lorna, it looks super creepy. I mean, yeah, super creepy. That was like one of the
ghastly almost. It was just like she's like a floating spirit creature thing that is,
you might see
clearly
in The Witcher, like something that you would see in The Witcher.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's a monster. It's a pure monster, and it's super creepy. They end up realizing that she was the reason that Auntie Whispers was like not letting her out. It wasn't to keep her in to like abuse her and like use her as like a slave, but it was to so that she didn't become monstrous like we see in this episode. So it's really
right. And I was like, even Auntie Whispers was like, nobody came by, right? And anybody to eat, you know? And it made it seem like she was talking about her.
Yes. It's one of those beautiful lies, you know, or it's one of those lovely lies that the show is telling you. Like, you don't know what to expect until it plays out.
Right.
So,
and then they end up using the bell to save Lorna, which I don't understand why Auntie Whispers didn't try that to begin with.
Right. I mean, at the end, she's just like, I didn't want you to leave, which I guess could possibly mean that she kept that whole thing up with the spirit thing so that she wouldn't be alone. But in the end, Lorna wanted to stay with her, which was nice.
You're right. And it ended up becoming, it like ended on like a heartfelt kind of thing, but it was really creepy. The episode was like the creepiest one. Yeah,
that was definitely like the highlight of like the show's creepiness. But then we get into episode 8, which is, we talked a little bit about it before, but they're going to sleep, and Wirt is very angry with Greg, and he starts saying like, I'm done, trying to. Actually, you know what? We skipped a big part. We skipped the whole Adelaide bit.
We did.
I was
just thinking about that. I was like, wait,
or
when are we
maybe it was the episode prior.
Right, where...
Yeah.
And it was Beatrice was leading them to Adelaide, but then she started rethinking it because she got to know these characters and was like, I don't want to do this to them. And so she goes to Adelaide to let her know, like, hey, deal's off. And Wirt and Greg end up following her into the house. I mean, Adelaide was like really creepy too. She's like, I don't want any fresh air in here. It makes me sick.
And it really did.
Yeah, right. And so like she like Beatrice opens the door and she ends up like Adelaide ends up like melting / like poofing into dust.
Yeah, that was probably the easiest like solution to that problem. But Greg and Wirt, or at least Wirt specifically, lost his faith in Beatrice for a little bit because of the fact that Beatrice was leading them to their doom eventually. And you go back to the earlier episodes, like on a rewatch, and you're just like, oh wow, yeah, Beatrice was totally leading them to this place to die or whatever. Yeah, just so that she can get back to reality.
Right,
for her and her family.
We find out that it was Adelaide that changed her and her family into bluebirds, and she was trying to get these scissors to like clip their wings so that they could become human again. Yeah,
which is like dark to think about, cutting a bluebird's wings and stuff. So it's the whole show's like super deep and
creepy.
You don't want to overthink things. Yeah. So anyway, going back to this point, Wirt is kind of fed up with Beatrice. He's fed up with himself for getting them into places, and he's fed up with Greg for causing all the chaos and mischief that he has over the past couple episodes. And they end up going to sleep, and Greg or Wirt tells him like, "You lead from now on. I'm done." And so Greg has this like it's almost like a prayer, I guess, that he's just like, help me be a better leader. And he ends up having this dream that lifts him into almost like a heavenly realm called Cloud City, where I thought it was pretty funny, the different reception committees.
Oh yeah.
And by the third committee, Greg's like, "Are there any more?" He goes, "That's enough."
Yeah, because it was like a depressed like dog or something.
Yes, and the whole sequence is a really weird one because
it's really
stylistically
trippy. Because and it made me think. I was like, man, like just because the key went up to the clouds, I was like, yo, did they like die or something?
Yeah, and you're not sure. Is this part of like the
unknown? Like you didn't know what it was. Like, did he die? Is this part of the world?
Yeah, and that goes into purgatory. Like, are they in between like heaven and hell, and he just went to heaven just now? Is that what's happening?
Right.
It's a weird reality, like within a reality that Greg inhabits for a short while, and the art style is very much like one of the very old Walt Disney shorts back in the day. Like if you ever watch like short films from Walt Disney, like from even before,
like back in the day, they're super trippy.
Yeah, before the Mickey Mouse era and everything, it was just bizarre and trippy, and it was just like little gaffes and loops that he would do, and he'd make animals jump and stuff, and it felt like that. But overall, I think it's my least favorite episode because it just kind of meanders and doesn't add too much to the plot. But
what about when the North Wind comes in?
The North Wind. Yeah, I did love the animation for the North Wind. What did you think?
I thought the episode got better from that point on, and then after, because then you realize that what was going on from that point on was affecting them in the unknown, or like their reality, whatever reality their reality was. But like they were sleeping, and the north wind, the wind was starting to blow across them. It was starting to get cold, and they stopped. They kind of stopped, but while they were like on this like little boat before that moment, remember, before they fell asleep, and then they could hear the beast singing.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, because they're currently asleep in this episode for the most of it, and Wirt has given up at this point. It's almost like he's resigned to the fate that they're just lost. And that's part of what happens in Cloud City. Like, he's talking to that fairy godmother sort of character, and she tells him that, like, it's too late. Your brother's been taken by the trees and by the beast, basically. Like, he's given up, and he will become part of the Edelwood or whatever.
Right.
And
you see it growing around him.
And Greg basically gives himself up to save his brother, which is something that Wirt has not done yet.
Right.
Which is just a huge moment for Greg. It's a powerful moment because you see that Greg, who's this silly, happy-go-lucky character, no matter what happens, is giving up his freedom and his life to save his brother, Wirt, who seemingly doesn't care about him at this point.
Yeah.
It's super powerful. You know, you feel really bad for all of these characters.
Right. And the next episode is the episode that like brings them to their world where they're from.
Right. So I guess it's the episode that shows us what happened before they were in the garden, or over the garden wall, I should say, before they were on the unknown. And it goes into, you know, how Wirt was trying to make a mixtape for this girl named Sarah that he liked, but then Greg almost basically did give the tape to people who gave the tape, or who put the tape into Sarah's jacket pocket. And it became an adventure of trying to get the tape back because Wirt wasn't physically ready or emotionally ready to handle that kind of commitment, or, you know, he was cowardly at the end of the day.
Right, it's like a teenage thing.
What it took. Right, and it's understandable, and it's you don't hold it against him. It's just he wasn't ready for whatever he wanted. It's actually I liked the episode quite a bit. It almost reminded me of Stranger Things, based on like the setting and the types of people and the clothes that everyone was wearing, and just the town in general.
And then this is where you find out what Greg was dressed up as. But then you still don't know what Wirt was going with. Yeah, it was Halloween. It was for Halloween. That's why the setting of the show is Halloween essentially.
Yeah, and there's a point that I want to bring out that I noticed a couple times throughout the show. Whenever you see the moon, it's at a certain phase where it's a half moon, and it's always like in the same position every time you see the moon, even though like several days pass within the unknown. For whatever reason, the phase of the moon never changes, and we realize in this episode that that's the phase of the moon that it was on Halloween that night. For whatever, like they highlight the moon as being a half moon in that episode, so it's almost like no time at all passed. That I just thought it was creative, I guess, even though time does pass in the unknown. Clearly, like, the woodsman's been there for years, according to the beast, and we see day and night cycles. No time is actually passing.
Hey, you robbers, you're under arrest. Just kidding.
Happy Halloween.
Hey, stop running.
So stupid.
Is this a witches gathering? That one had me dying.
Yeah. I also love Jason Funderburger.
Because the way he like talks.
Jason Funderburger. Come on, Sarah.
And then like Wirt is like freaking out the whole time. Like, oh my gosh, he's like everything. He's the total package. And then like I thought it was like cute when Greg was like, "So are you?" Yes. Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, it was sweet.
And throughout that whole thing, like, Sarah never cared for Jason Funderburger aside from like they were hanging out, and it was just like all in Wirt's head, really.
It really was, yeah. Like, and then, you know, they're going and trying to get this tape that Wirt made for her, and remember when they go to the graveyard, Wirt was like, Greg's like, oh, I can make a distraction. And then when Wirt sees Jason Thunderburger's like hand on Sarah's lap, he's like, all right, do it. and then you just see like Greg just jump. He's like, woo! They're like, is that Greg? Is that Wirt's younger brother? He's like, no, I'm a headless elephant. And they're like, is Wirt here? And he's like, yeah, he's right there. Like, he just sold him out.
Yeah. So they end up running from the cops in this scene, and they climb up
which is funny because
wall.
they really didn't need to.
No, they didn't. It was, and the cop was like just messing with the kids, clearly. But they end up going over this wall, over the garden wall, and they almost got hit by a train in that instant. And they jump, or they fall down a hill and end up both kind of near drowning in a lake. And that's where we realize the story kind of starts for them.
Right. And that's how the episode before that ended, when he went, remember when Wirt went to go look for Greg and he ended up falling in the water.
He fell into the lake. And yeah, it was an interesting point, because Beatrice was like, where's Greg, Wirt? And it kind of just goes to show a little bit about his priorities. Obviously, like, he was looking for Greg in that moment, but before that, he was so dismissive of Greg that it was almost as if it wasn't his problem. I'm not my brother's keeper, sort of thing. And it's a fantastic story about, like, taking care of our brothers. So
right, and then you see that Wirt kind of has he has a resentment towards his brother because they're really half brothers, because his mother married Greg's father.
That was interesting, and it also showed some of his insecurities, Wirt's insecurities, because he was talking about like how, like, oh, you guys want me to do this and that, and all your dad wants me to do is join the marching band. So so he was clearly just insecure and mad at life, and Greg was just there, seemingly ruining it for him in his point of view.
Right, very teenage. It's a very teenager thing, outlook, essentially.
Yeah.
It's the angst, and then episode 10. This is where the Beast has been having Greg do all these like different tasks.
Right.
And you can see that Greg is starting to not look so well. Like, he's starting to look sick.
Yeah, he's starting to look sickly. He's looking like he hasn't been getting any sleep. And you wonder, like, what exactly is the Beast demanding of him, and like what's going to happen. And eventually he becomes part of like his own like little Edelwood bush or tree or whatever. And Wirt finds him along with Beatrice's help, and they try to get him out, but there's another battle going on with the woodsman and the Beast at the same time, where it kind of all comes to a head. Like, what exactly is the lantern for?
Right.
So it's being burned with the sap from these Edelwood trees,
which happens to be the souls of children.
Yeah, basically the sap is essentially what that is supposed to be, I guess. How did you come to that conclusion, or besides like what the show showed?
Well, I mean, that's essentially like what they said that's what that was. Like, it was children that were being made of that's what the Edelwood was, and that that he didn't want to exchange their soul for his daughter. Like, he didn't want to do it. He didn't know what it was at first, and then when he realized it, he was done.
Yeah, and you feel bad for the woodsman, because he's been under the impression that he's been keeping the light of his daughter alive for this whole time, but really he's just been doing the Beast's will since the beginning.
Right, because it's the Beast that's in that lantern.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to swallow.
Right. He lied to the woodsman, essentially.
Right. Yeah, it's almost he gave the woodsman a lovely lie, because he's just like, if you do this, you'll keep your daughter's like spirit alive, basically. And Wirt kind of realizes it first. He realizes that the whole idea of him like doing what the woodsman is doing for years and years for the rest of his life just to keep the spirit of his brother alive is stupid.
Right.
And he's not going to play that game.
And then he was the one that made the point about, is his daughter really in there, or is that you? Why are you so invested in this lantern? Right.
And he like faints as if he's going to blow out the candle or blow out the flame, and the Beast like freaks out. So that's when we knew, he needs this lantern to burn to
exist. Yeah.
To exist, yeah. And the woodsman realizes this and doesn't want to play his game any longer and ends up snuffing out the flame, while Wirt cuts down the Edelwood tree, which, you know, has his brother ensnared.
Yeah.
And then the episode, or the story, comes to a close, basically. Like, Wirt wakes up in the water, finds the frog and Greg just kind of floating, and, you know, he picks him up and...
Right. The nice thing about the show is that he really just... It helps Wirt to realize that he really does care about his brother.
Yeah, and that's ultimately the greatest moral that you can get from the story is... not to be an angsty teen when, you know, other people are involved in stuff, especially like brothers, and don't dismiss others because you and your grievances perceive others to be the problem or whatever. But I think it's a really lovely story. I think it's a really heartfelt story, and, you know, they're in the hospital, and Wirt wakes up. He's just like, "Where's Greg?" It's the first thing he thinks of. Not the fact that the girl that he has a crush on is like leaning over him or anything. He wants to know that his brother's okay.
Yeah.
And that shows that the arc of his character has totally changed. Because before he couldn't care, like in the episode prior when you're going through like the Halloween stuff, he couldn't care that he couldn't care that Greg was like hanging along.
Right.
Remember? He didn't want him around. But now that's the first thing he thought of when, like, after they've had all those adventures. And seemingly the adventures were real. Like, Greg was talking about the adventures. He was shaking up the frog, and the lantern or the bell was like ringing and glowing inside him. And then we have the montage of all the stuff.
Right, and then it closes out with like the second half of that of the beginning song. And it's actually like I said, the first half kind of sets up like an ominous adventure, and then the second half like sets it up for like a happy ending. The sound of it sounds a lot like, you know, happier.
For sure. Yeah, it's a really
the woodsman gets his daughter back. Beatrice becomes human along with her family. Lorna and Auntie Whispers are living a happy life, and it was funny what Beatrice's mom, she was like, come and eat your dirt, and then Beatrice is like, don't call it that. She's like, what are you gonna do, turn us into bluebirds again?
Right. So for them, like, all the people that were affected by all of this, that was reality. Like, that actually happened. For whatever reason, they're no longer in that purgatory state of the unknown, and they're back to reality, but they have those shared memories. And it kind of just begs the question, did it actually happen? Was it just a big shared dream? And
right.
I like the idea that it did happen in this parallel world.
Yeah, same.
I think that's where I stand with that. There are some people that interpret the song "The Loveliest Lies of All" as the fact that Wirt and Greg didn't actually survive. And that I don't subscribe to that theory personally, just because it doesn't ring true for the rest of the show, I guess. It's almost like it's suggesting that the loveliest lie is that the show has a happy ending when it really doesn't. But I do think the show does have a happy ending for a number of like characters and for a number of reasons.
Right.
And I guess that's what I prefer to believe here.
Agreed.
And that is our coverage of Over the Garden Wall. Anthony, did you like the show?
I hated it, Dakota.
Damn, I knew it.
It was I enjoyed it. I did, but like my enjoyment of it was, I don't know, like I would say it's different from the way that I enjoy other things. It was like just really, really odd, but like I will say that it very few times am I satisfied with the ending of a TV show or a movie, but that had like a really satisfying ending,
which is amazing. It's amazing.
It is amazing, and I told you that it was an ending that allowed me to not, like, I didn't need more. Like, I felt good with what I had.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a concise show It doesn't necessarily need a sequel. You were talking about how Patrick McHale says that he's working on a spiritual successor to Over the Garden Wall, which I appreciate, because a sequel series or a sequel thing probably wouldn't work
Right.
as well. But if it's a spiritual successor, I think that could be a cool thing. Maybe more exploration of the unknown or whatever. But I'm excited about whatever that prospect is. So next week we're going to be covering Revenge of the Sith. So be sure to rewatch Revenge of the Sith so that we can all enjoy discussing the little details, the minutiae of some people's favorite Star Wars movie ever. So I'm excited to dig down deep. I know that's the movie I probably watch the least because it's so dark. Like it is the darkest of the Star Wars movies, really. So I'm excited to revisit it and see, just try to learn a little bit more.
I would say that Revenge of the Sith is probably the prequel movie that I've seen the most, just because I feel like it's the best out of all the prequel movies.
I agree with that. And
I feel like this is where we get our best version of Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan. That's like I liked him in Attack of the Clones, but bro, that mullet just was not working, man. That mullet.
Yeah, it's a tough look.
But he looked a lot more like his episode 4 character in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, you could start to see that change start to happen. But anyway, we'll talk more about that next week. We hope you enjoyed this discussion of Over the Garden Wall. If it's invigorated you to rewatch the show, please do it. It only takes an hour or two or whatever to actually get through it. It's well worth your time. So we hope to see you next week. Go ahead and follow us wherever we post stuff on social media, like P Geekology on Twitter and Project Geekology on Instagram. Just look us up. You'll find us. No problem. And yeah, subscribe if you haven't already to learn more about the random stuff that we like talking about.
Yes. Give us a good review and we will read them on air.
Yeah, actually we should get back into that because I think there's a couple that we haven't read in a while. So next week we'll try to jump on that. All right,
awesome.
Guys, have a good one.
Bye.
Potatus et molassus, si velis eis quaera nobis, lenes et caldi, valuti catuli, plenicum petri, dulcibus, o potatus et molassus, si velis eis quaera nobis, lenes et